Good day, lords and ladies, and welcome to Wasteland 2, my review of the game after completing the campaign. Now, as you can see in the background, I've had some footage from my Let's Play series playing, so we can have a bit of something to do, and so I'm discussing my review of the game. The game review will be broken into three parts. First, we're going to discuss plot, then we're going to discuss gameplay, then we're going to discuss mechanics. So, starting off with the plot. Now, I play quite a lot of RPGs, so I'm pretty used to various different forms and types of plot. I must admit that the plot for Wastelands 2 is, though in itself not bad, it isn't particularly anything spectacular. It was quite apparent the moment that you had robots turning up that from the hints that you'd had earlier that basically the Cochise AI was still relatively active, or at least had something to do with the actual story. I had suspected quite early on that Matthias was basically either in cahoots with the AI or was basically just a front for the AI. To be honest, I actually expected him to purely be just like a hologram or something, and for the AI to be the thing pulling the strings, like in the initial System Shock series with what was her name? Basically, you have like a killer AI in that, which is there's something pretty much identical. But that's what Godan, was it not? Shodan? Yeah, Shodan. I think that was the name of the enemy AI in System Shock. But anyway, the story itself, not particularly anything fantastic. I mean, it's not bad, but it wasn't great. I do see what people were saying, that the second half, like when you went to LA, the second half of the game was a lot weaker story-wise in comparison to the first half. I agree with that partly. I mean, it was still a relatively okay second chapter for a game. Was it as interesting as the first chapter? No. The first chapter had a lot more, I suppose you could say, continuity and flow. It flowed a lot better, a lot more of the different missions and story elements interlinked, rather than the piecemeal approach that you had in Los Angeles, I should say, sorry. So overall, I found the story's not bad, but it wasn't great, so I'd sort of give it a middling, sort of middle of the road approval. It was good enough, but it could have been a lot better. They could have done something different without having the AI turn up again, or at least have the AI working in a different way, maybe having it like as a fragment, and that the bloke working for the person doing it was doing his own thing, but he was being influenced by the fragment rather than it just being the AI planning everything from behind the scenes. So, that's the story. On to gameplay itself. Graphically, for its time, not bad graphics. I mean, a bit bland area, like map-wise, on a lot of things. Especially later on, a lot of the items and various bits and bobs that you found just weren't worth picking up. They weren't worth enough money to justify you hauling around all this scrap that you wouldn't get much money for. I've already stated my views on the weaponry in the game, but I'm going to state them again anyway. I do think that the game making weapons like the submachine gun and shotgun, especially on the harder difficulties, pretty much redundant. I looked around and read a lot of various sort of guides and stuff before starting my Let's Play, and listened to people when I was doing it, and lots of them were saying, like submachine guns and shotguns on like anything past normal difficulty pretty much become redundant weaponry, and you should literally have everyone either armed with assault rifles or sniper rifles, or maybe if you can get hold of it at later level, maybe like some of the better heavy weapons. But besides that, it was like there's no use on. They don't have the armor penetration at They don't have armor penetration at later levels. The game becomes incredibly difficult on the harder difficulties with weapons that have hardly any armor penetration. So there was no point in having them. which is something I found rather a shame. I don't like it when when games have a difficulty settings which basically make certain types of weapons redundant. You should have weapons in every weapon class that can be used at any game difficulty. You shouldn't have preferential builds for different difficulties. It's something I've always believed in. It was some of my biggest pet peeves is when you have mid-maxing or micromanaging where there's very particular builds that work well for certain games, like, oh, you want to have this and this and this, and with this you can get the optimum build because you have these things work in conjunction. I don't like that. I don't believe in mid-maxing in games. It's something I've always had particular peeve about. So yeah, if it was me and I know they're doing the next game, I would hope that they make it so that every weapons class has weapons that can be used at any difficulty and at any stage in the game. That being said, I would also want them to do an overhaul of the NPC AIs in combat, so that if you have allied party members, you can control them rather than them doing their own thing, because at the moment they're pretty bad. I don't like the automatic NPCs. It's really annoying because, especially, for example, this mission where you can't control a bunch of really important NPCs and they'll get killed and it will affect your outcome of the game. So your choice is to leave them completely behind because you can't control them, or you have to just pray to RNG and hope you get lucky, which is not something that should be really a factor in a tactical game like this. When it's a squad-based tactics game, you should be able to control your NPCs and just have a bit more control over certain elements. Like, I don't have a problem with the NPCs doing their own stuff, but if they're going to do their own stuff, you better give them actual decent algorithms for them to do it, so they don't run ahead into like 20,000 people like it's happening up here. Because one of the things I have noticed that the NPCs prioritized high value targets, so they'll run past like dozens of enemies and into a really bad situation, which isn't great. What else? As I said, what else? Yeah, you have the game's currency system, especially at lower levels, especially at late levels. A lot of the items that give you scrap, like a lot of the junk items, become pointless, and there's no point picking them up because you don't get enough money from them. It's just more economical to pick up guns and sell them, which I found which was a bit disappointing, because after a particular point in the game there was never any reason for me to pick up junk items to sell, because none of them were worth anything, which in itself was a bit disappointing. So I liked that kind of thing. It had the image of you going around collecting stuff to sell. So I hope they fixed it. I hope that the actual scrap becomes more useful, or the actual like junk items in the next game become more useful. Now, this is the next bit I'm going to say is, like, also I think they should have had like more enemy types. That's, to be honest, this because Stredman said it now. I think in gameplay terms, outside of story missions, there was a very lack of variety with encounter types. You tended to meet the exact same. If you were fighting the robots in Los Angeles, you were always meeting the exact same types. If you were fighting, it became a bit repetitive, to be honest. It was one of the reasons I stopped doing a lot of the encounters, especially in the first half of the game, was that they just became really repetitive. It was relatively the same map pool, relatively the same enemy types, and there wasn't enough variety, and there wasn't enough like surprise encounters for it to be really worth fighting every enemy encounter, except for having all the XP. So I think for the next game it would be nice if they just had a bit more enemy variety rather than the limited pool that you had outside of story missions, because it became very limited very quickly. Right, so we've covered weapons, we covered the game economy, we've covered NPCs, what else? Yeah, we should probably discuss some of the game mechanics now, because these were the ones that I had some major issues with. First off, no tutorial system at all. They had no manual. Well, I take it back. They have a manual. They have a PDF manual, but it's hidden inside the game file somewhere, and you have to sort of dig through the files to find it. And it mostly covers Wasteland, the original Wasteland. Because if you buy the second one, you get the first one's free. So the handbook covers mostly the first game, which I find really strange. It's not great. A lot of the stuff that you need to know is left out. For example, game mechanics. Like, for example, you can use explosives to blow open containers or blow open doors. Like, that was never told to me. If I hadn't noticed it in a loading screen hint tip section, I wouldn't have known about it. I've said this before in the game, and I say it now. I do really believe that this game would have done well with having, I don't know, they could have probably done it as a tutorial, like, oh, go through basic training, this is what your character can do, these are the things you can do with these abilities. Rather than just sort of go, okay, make your characters for the game, we're throwing you into the deep end, good luck. In a system, for example, like, I had to be told by a player how the action points were generated in game for which character statistics, and why you should try and buff those, because it basically fed into having more action points. I wasn't told how to do that. I wasn't told how various abilities and skills worked, like just the basic ones. And like which attributes affected which things. It became frustrating for me that this basic knowledge wasn't being explained at the beginning of the game. So like you make characters and you go into this really long campaign with characters who may not be functional. Like I did it within the Rail Nomad section, where I didn't have a character that had the particular dialogue options, and I found it really annoying that throughout the entire first half of the game you required this particular dialogue option, which was, I think it was like, I had like intimidate, and then for this one encounter with the Rail Nomads, you needed to have sweet talk or something, or unless you were psychicking some way and able to type into the actual sort of like there was a dialogue box you could type in, and if you put the right phrase in, it would have this mysterious like best outcome. And before they patched the game, that was the only way you could get the best outcome, which I found really annoying, because they never tell you anywhere else in the game that you can do this. They never tell you can, like, oh, type this in and this has the outcome that you want. And it only ever happens in this one section. So I think that a lot of stuff the game just took for granted, expected you to have prior knowledge. I think they wanted people to have played the game through several times. It's like, oh, if you want to get the best ending, you need to have played the game through several times to know what you had to do in advance to basically not metagame, but to micromax your party in such a way that you knew what you had to do. That was something I didn't like. I don't like that. I don't like the fact that they expect you to have to play through a game at least once or twice to basically know what you have to do to get the best outcomes. If you're a good enough player, you should be able to get the best outcome. So I think and I hope they do change that. I hope that they make it so when it comes to important story elements that you have, like, any of your dialogue options can be used, not just one particular one that hardly gets used at all. It's just one of my pet peeves. I dislike it when games have that mechanic where they expect you to have like foreknowledge of certain events so that you can plan in advance. It's like, oh, you should have known that this person needed this particular skill, and it's like, really? How? I'm not a psychic. I haven't played this game before. You're just expecting me to have failed so that you can get out of actually having to make this game more well organised, and it is. It's not particularly fantastic. So I do hope they make the game a bit more competent next time around, that they actually put some effort in and make it so that it's not just, oh, okay, you messed up, play it again, and this time you'll know what to do in advance so you can custom build your characters to be more useful. It's like, no, you should have it so the game is balanced enough that they don't have to do that. But besides that, it's not a bad game. I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed Wasteland 2. Are there things wrong with it? Yes, I'm not going to lie. There are definitely things wrong with it and things they could have improved. But besides that, it could have been worse. I had a good time. It's not the best RPG I've ever played. There are a lot of bits and pieces wrong with it, but it's a good RPG. In the comparison with the old school, like stuff like Neverwinter Nights and other really quite good classics, like the original Fallout series, which Wasteland inspired, it's a good RPG. It just needs a lot of polish. It needed a lot of polish, and it didn't really get it, even with the remastering, which was a shame. So I do hope Wasteland 3, when it comes out, is more refined than this one, because this game, though good, could have been a great game if they had just done things like put a tutorial in, make it so that you didn't have to replay the game to get the best outcomes, and you were just a bit more considerate with the systems in general, rather than sort of going, that's fine, it'll do, because that's what the game has a feeling of. It has a very much it will do mentality, especially with certain aspects. So if I was recommending this game to other people, I would definitely say go and play Wastelands 2. Don't expect to be getting into something of the quality like Pillars of Eternity or Neverwinter Nights or something like that, because Wastelands 2 is not that. It's a good game, but it's not those games' quality. So until next time, folks, I've been Cornish-Knight. This has been Wastelands 2, the review of my Let's Play and my thoughts on the game, and I shall see you all next time for the next episode of Cornish-Knight Let's Play series. Goodbye.